historic drought at one of the world's largest trading routes.
The wait time to get through, now up to 3 weeks.
And we see ship after ship just waiting.
Picture a single corridor where global trade, great power rivalry, and cartel logistics all collide. Not a battlefield, not a border fence, a shipping lane. Because the modern drug economy doesn't need to control a country. It only needs to exploit the systems that move the world's goods. And there may be no better example than Panama, where the canal is sovereign, but the ports are commercial, and commercial assets can be bought, sold, challenged in court, and thrown into geopolitical chaos. In this episode, we break down a high-stakes story. The proposed BlackRock-led purchase of Panama's key port terminals, what happened after the deal was announced, and why the outcome matters for trade security and cartel smuggling. For context, keep this in mind. In 1989, the United States invaded a sovereign nation, not for oil, but for drugs, money, and control of a strategic choke point. 35 years later, that same corridor is back in the headlines. The Panama Canal. Donald Trump says the United States is taking it back.
Further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal.
Wall Street quietly moves to buy the ports on both ends, and drug cartels continue to move cocaine through the same shipping lanes.
Customs and Border Protection officers found hundreds of pounds of meth and cocaine hidden inside rocks being transported across the border.
Tonight, we break down why Panama still matters. Which cartels operate there? Why ports, not canals, are the real power? Panama is not a major drug-producing country. Its power lies in geography. 2 oceans, one of the busiest canals on Earth. More than 14,000 ships transit the Panama Canal every year. Only a fraction of their cargo is physically inspected. For drug cartels, that is not a vulnerability. It is a logistical advantage. Panama is not where drugs are made. It is where drugs disappear into the global supply chain. The major drug cartels of the world are not headquartered in Panama, but they operate there every day. Colombian trafficking organizations, including the Clan del Golfo, move cocaine north through Panama using boats and commercial shipping routes. Mexican cartels, especially the Sinaloa cartel, do not control territory in Panama. They rely on brokers and local criminal partners. One of those partners is the Baghdad Syndicate, a Panamanian organization convicted in U.S. federal court for trafficking large quantities of cocaine. This is how modern cartels operate. They do not need flags or armies. They need access. Ports are power. To understand this story, you have to separate 2 ideas that get mixed together constantly: the Panama Canal and the ports beside it. The canal is sovereign Panamanian infrastructure. It is governed and operated by Panama. The ports are different. They are commercial terminals, container yards, storage areas, where global shipping companies load, unload, and move freight. And these ports sit at the 2 ends of the canal: Balboa on the Pacific side, Cristóbal on the Atlantic side. If you want to influence trade flows in the canal corridor, legally, ports are where leverage lives. Ports are also where concealment becomes possible. Because in the containerized world, a shipment can move thousands of miles with a clean manifest, while contraband rides inside a tiny fraction of cargo. That's why cartels love maritime logistics. It's not about running boats fast. It's about hiding in scale. The Panama Canal is sovereign territory, but ports are commercial assets. And commercial assets can be bought. For years, these ports were operated by C.K. Hutchison, a Hong Kong-based conglomerate. In 2025, a BlackRock-led consortium announced plans to acquire them. The deal was framed as a business transaction, but strategically, it meant something far more significant. Control the ports, and you influence everything that moves through the canal. Modern drug trafficking is no longer dominated by speedboat, it is dominated by containers. Cocaine hidden inside bananas, frozen seafood, scrap metal. Ports process thousands of containers per day. Customs agencies inspect only a small percentage. The canal does not need to be corrupt. The ports only need to be porous. Here's the core mechanic. Container ports process a massive volume of goods every day. The inspection capacity of any customs agency is limited. That creates a gap between what could be inspected and what is inspected. Organized crime groups don't need to control the canal. They need access to the commercial layer around it, ranging from small favors to systemic penetration. When people ask, how do cartels operate in Panama? The most accurate answer is this: Panama isn't always the headquarters. It's the interchange. It's where cargo becomes anonymous. In March of 2025, a major announcement hit global markets. A BlackRock-led consortium agreed in principle to buy a large portfolio of port assets from C.K. Hutchison. The headline number was enormous, roughly $22 to $23 billion, spanning dozens of ports across multiple countries. Inside that larger portfolio was the part that mattered most for geopolitics. And this is where the story became more than finance. Because ports aren't just revenue, they are infrastructure, and infrastructure sits at the intersection of commerce and national security. The reactions came fast. In the United States, the deal was framed by some political voices as reducing China-linked influence near the canal. In Panama, officials reiterated that the canal itself is Panamanian, and that ownership claims missed the legal reality and China-linked commercial interests. The deal triggered concern because port ownership carries strategic implications far beyond shipping profits. You can have a deal that is legally commercial and still be treated as geopolitics, because ports are dual use by nature: trade infrastructure on paper, strategic leverage in reality. Then the story turned into law. In 2025, Panama's institutions increased scrutiny of the port concession agreements governing the terminals. The issue wasn't whether ports were useful. The issue was whether the concessions complied with constitutional procedures and procurement rules. And that matters because a port terminal isn't like a normal building. Its value comes from its rights, its authority to operate. If the concession is legally unstable, the asset is legally unstable. In January of 2026, the decisive moment arrived. Panama's Supreme Court annulled the concession contracts tied to C.K. Hutchison's port operations. The effect was immediate. The deal froze, not because anyone stole the canal, but because the legal foundation under the ports was declared defective. Sovereignty is not only about flags, it is about contract legitimacy. After a concession is annulled, two tracks emerge. Panama must keep cargo moving while deciding what comes next. Internationally, affected investors may pursue arbitration. In early 2026, that is exactly where this situation sits. Ports are physical systems: labor, ships, data, insurance. The longer uncertainty lasts, the more everyone hedges exposure. Map the stakeholders. Panama has sovereignty incentives, constitutional legitimacy, domestic politics, and control narratives. The United States has security incentives, supply chain resilience. China has strategic and commercial incentives, protecting global logistics positions. Shipping companies need reliability. Investors need stable returns. And cartels? They don't need a seat at the table. They benefit from uncertainty, overload, and complexity, because complexity creates concealment. So, where does the deal stand now? As of early 2026, there has been no clean, completed transfer of operating rights. The obstacle is the concession, and that narrows the future to three possibilities: a renegotiated concession, and new legal pathway. A new international tender requiring competitive bids, or arbitration producing financial settlements. This is no longer a simple purchase. It is a contest over infrastructure legitimacy. Now, connect this back to cartels. Without exaggeration, cartels exploit ports for 3 reasons. The point is not that any one owner is the cartel. The point is that the port ecosystem, by design, can be exploited. And when governance is distracted, contraband prefers the shadows. To understand why Panama still matters, look through the lens of history. Manuel Noriega was not just a dictator. He was a U.S. intelligence asset. He was also a documented drug trafficker. In 1989, the United States invaded Panama, captured Noriega, and brought him to the U.S. for trial. The justification was clear: drug trafficking, threats to U.S. personnel, and instability near the canal. Noriega was convicted, and a precedent was set. Nicolas Maduro has also now been captured, and he has been indicted. And that comparison matters, not because history repeats exactly, but because precedent matters. The question is not whether the United States can act. The question is whether it should. Noriega answered that question once before. When politicians talk about taking back the Panama Canal, they are not talking about ownership. They are talking about influence. The canal belongs to Panama, but the U.S. has demonstrated they are willing to intervene directly with a country's sovereignty as they have with Venezuela. The infrastructure around the canal is global. Cartels understand this. Investors understand this. Governments understand this. The battle is no longer about territory. It is about logistics, ports, and Panama remains the center of gravity. The canal never left the spotlight. We just stopped watching.